Hey there, welcome back. We're diving deep today into two ancient philosophies, Stoicism and Taoism. You shared this YouTube video with us, Mastering Life, a journey through Stoicism and Taoism, and it's from the channel Inner Balance Red Print. It seems like you're really interested in seeing if these seemingly different philosophies can offer us some guidance for living a more fulfilling life. So can these ancient ideas really help us navigate the modern world? Well, let's find out.
I'm excited to dive in.
Me too. Now, you probably already know that Stoicism comes from ancient Greece, but the story of its founder, Zeno of Citium, is, well, it's pretty wild.
Oh, I love Zeno's story. It's a classic example of finding opportunity in the face of adversity.
Right. He was this wealthy merchant who ended up losing everything in a shipwreck, and then he found solace in philosophy.
Talk about a life-changing experience.
I know, right? This led him to develop Stoicism, which basically centers on the idea of understanding and accepting what we can and cannot control. You know, it's like that saying, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
That's a perfect way to sum it up.
Yeah.
It's about focusing on what's within our sphere of influence, our own thoughts, actions, and reactions, rather than getting caught up in things we can't control.
So instead of getting frustrated when, like, you step on a Lego, Stoicism would say, okay, I can't change the fact that I just stepped on a Lego, but I can control how I react to it.
Exactly. You can choose to curse the Lego god.
Or you can take a deep breath, accept the pain, and move on.
And maybe even laugh about it later.
Right. It's about choosing our response, even to Lego-induced pain.
It's about recognizing that our power lies in our mindset, not in trying to control the uncontrollable.
Okay, so Stoicism is all about mastering our inner world, our thoughts and our reactions. But how does Taoism, with its ancient Chinese roots and emphasis on harmony with nature, approach external chaos? Like, how does it deal with those things we can't control?
That's a fantastic question. It's interesting how these two philosophies, while originating in different parts of the world, can offer such complementary perspectives.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
So, while Stoicism helps us build that inner resilience, Taoism teaches us to harmonize with the natural flow of the universe. Imagine a river of chocolate.
A river of chocolate. Okay, you've got my attention.
Right. Now, imagine trying to swim upstream in that river of chocolate. You're going to get nowhere fast. But if you go with the flow, you might just end up at a delicious chocolate waterfall.
Okay, I love where you're going with this. So instead of resisting the things we can't control, Taoism would say we should just go with the flow and see where it takes us.
Exactly. Taoism is all about accepting what is and adapting to circumstances. It values simplicity, finding joy in the uncomplicated, and appreciating those little moments of surprise and delight that life throws our way.
So Stoicism empowers us to choose our response, even to Lego-induced pain, by shifting focus from the uncontrollable event to our controllable mindset, while Taoism encourages us to ride the waves of change, trusting that the universe, like that chocolate river, has a delicious plan for us.
Beautifully put. And within Taoism, there's this captivating concept of yin and yang, which goes beyond a simple balance of opposites. It's about the dynamic interplay of seemingly opposite forces, light and dark, action and inaction, where each relies on the other for existence, creating a harmonious whole. Just like in that river of chocolate, you need both the smooth flow and the occasional ripple to make the journey interesting.
Okay, so we've got Stoicism, which emphasizes mastering our internal world, and Taoism, which invites us to harmonize with the external flow. They seem so different, yet both ultimately aim for a kind of peace and acceptance. It's like Stoicism is a cat-independent, dignified, focused on self-control, while Taoism is more like a dog, in tune with its surroundings, going with the flow, seeking harmony.
I love that analogy. It highlights the core differences in their approaches, yet both ultimately lead to a path of acceptance and harmony.
So it's not about choosing one over the other, but rather recognizing how they can complement each other in our lives.
Absolutely. Having a stoic mindset can help you deal with the things you can control, like your reactions to frustrating situations, while a Taoist perspective can help you accept and adapt to the things you can't control.
Speaking of finding peace in everyday life, even our entertainment choices can benefit from a Stoic or Taoist lens. Think about your Netflix habits. How often do we get caught up in the endless scroll, the pressure to find the perfect thing to watch?
That's a great point. It happens to all of us. And Stoicism reminds us that we can't control what shows are available or what the algorithm suggests, but we can control our reactions to those things.
So instead of getting frustrated when your top pick disappears, Stoicism would encourage you to maybe discover a new genre you never thought you'd like.
Exactly. It's about choosing curiosity over frustration and recognizing that even in the realm of entertainment, we have the power to choose our response.
And how would Taoism approach our Netflix dilemmas?
Well, imagine approaching Netflix with a sense of playful exploration, like uh, like a dog sniffing out new scents in the park. Instead of getting bogged down by indecision, you could just tune into your intuition and see where it leads you. Maybe you discover a new director or stumble upon a hidden gem of a documentary, or simply enjoy the journey of browsing without any fixed destination in mind.
So Taoism encourages us to embrace the flow of our entertainment choices, just like we embrace the flow of life.
Exactly. It's about letting go of the need to control and simply enjoying the ride.
All right, so far we've seen how Stoicism and Taoism can be applied to navigating our entertainment choices. But how can these philosophies help us deal with more challenging aspects of modern life, like those frustrating situations at work?
Ah, yes, the workplace, a breeding ground for both Stoic resilience and Taoist adaptability.
So let's say you're dealing with a difficult coworker or a project that's not going as planned. How would Stoicism help us deal with that?
Well, this is where Stoicism can be incredibly powerful. Let's say you're dealing with a difficult coworker or a project that's not going as planned. Stoicism would encourage you to kind of step back and assess the situation. What aspects of this are truly within your control? Perhaps it's your attitude, your work ethic, or your communication style.
And thinking about those elements we can control, how would Taoism approach a work-related challenge?
Taoism would remind us that challenges and obstacles are a natural part of life, like the rocks in a flowing river. Instead of resisting or fighting against them, we can learn to adapt and flow around them. Perhaps it's about finding a way to collaborate with that difficult coworker or looking for opportunities to learn and grow from that challenging project.
So Stoicism helps us focus on what we can control within ourselves, while Taoism encourages us to find a harmonious path around external obstacles.
Precisely. It's like having two different sets of tools for navigating the complexities of the workplace.
It seems like both philosophies can help us approach work with more resilience and a greater sense of peace. But work is just one part of life. How can these philosophies guide us in our personal lives, especially in our relationships with loved ones?
That's a great question, and one that really gets to the heart of why these philosophies are so enduringly relevant. After all, our relationships with others are such a fundamental part of our human experience.
So let's say you're having a disagreement with a loved one. It could be a partner, a family member, a friend. How can Stoicism and Taoism help us navigate these tricky emotional waters?
Well, Stoicism reminds us that we can't control how others behave, but we can control how we react to their behavior.
Hmm.
Instead of getting caught up in an argument or trying to change the other person's mind, Stoicism would advise us to focus on our own reactions and responses.
You mentioned accepting the other person's behavior, but how do we balance acceptance with actively trying to communicate our needs and feelings in the relationship?
That's an important point. Stoicism isn't about passively accepting mistreatment or neglecting your own needs. It's about choosing your battles wisely and finding constructive ways to communicate your perspective without letting your emotions control you.
So it's about finding that balance between accepting what you can't change and asserting yourself when necessary.
Exactly. And that's where Taoism can offer a complementary perspective.
Okay, so how would Taoism guide us through a relationship challenge?
Taoism would remind us that relationships, like everything else in life, are constantly evolving and changing. There will be times of harmony and times of discord. It's about accepting the natural ebb and flow of the relationship and finding ways to adapt.
So maybe it's about finding ways to compromise or learning to appreciate the differences between you and your loved one.
Yes, it's about finding a balance between your needs and the needs of the other person, and recognizing that sometimes disagreements are just a natural part of a healthy relationship.
Just like in nature, relationships thrive on a dynamic interplay of different elements.
It sounds like both Stoicism and Taoism can help us navigate the complexities of human relationships with more grace and understanding.
Absolutely. They provide frameworks for communication, acceptance, and finding balance in a space that can often be emotionally charged.
So we've seen how Stoicism and Taoism can help us in our relationships and at work. But what about our overall emotional well-being? How can these philosophies help us deal with the stress, anxiety, and inevitable ups and downs of life? This is where both Stoicism and Taoism truly shine. They offer powerful tools for cultivating inner peace and resilience, even in the face of challenging emotions.
Let's start with Stoicism. How can it help us manage our emotions, especially in those moments when we feel like we're drowning in stress or anxiety?
Stoicism emphasizes the importance of controlling our thoughts and reactions to external events.
Yeah.
It reminds us that our emotions are often a result of our interpretations of events rather than the events themselves. So if you're feeling stressed or anxious, Stoicism would encourage you to kind of examine your thoughts and see if they're contributing to your negative feelings.
Okay, so let's say I'm completely freaking out about an upcoming presentation at work. I'm telling myself, I'm going to mess this up or everyone is going to judge me. How would Stoicism help me in that moment?
Well, Stoicism would challenge you to question those thoughts and replace them with more rational and positive ones. For example, you might remind yourself, I've prepared well for this presentation and I'm capable of doing a good job.
So it's about recognizing that our thoughts have power and that we can choose to focus on more empowering and supportive thoughts.
Precisely. By shifting your focus from negative to positive thoughts, you can begin to manage your anxiety and cultivate a sense of calm.
And how does Taoism approach emotional well-being, especially in those moments when we feel overwhelmed by external pressures?
Taoism emphasizes the importance of living in harmony with nature and accepting the natural flow of life. It encourages us to let go of attachments to outcomes and to find peace in the present moment.
So if I'm feeling overwhelmed or stressed, Taoism would suggest taking a step back and connecting with nature, whether it's going for a walk in the park, listening to the sounds of the ocean, or simply taking a few deep breaths.
Yes, it's about finding ways to ground yourself in the present moment and let go of worries about the past or future.
It sounds like both Stoicism and Taoism offer valuable tools for managing our emotions and cultivating a sense of inner peace, even in a world that can often feel chaotic and unpredictable.
They do. They offer different approaches, but both ultimately aim to help us live more fulfilling and meaningful lives, free from unnecessary suffering.
Okay, so we've talked about relationships, emotional well-being, and how these philosophies can even help us navigate our entertainment choices and deal with workplace challenges. But what about the bigger picture? How can Stoicism and Taoism help us find a sense of purpose in a world that often feels meaningless?
That's a great question, and one that gets to the heart of why these philosophies are so enduringly relevant. They offer guidance not just for navigating the day-to-day, but also for finding deeper meaning and direction in life.
So let's start with Stoicism. In a world that often bombards us with external markers of success, how can Stoicism help us define what really matters and live a life that feels authentic and purposeful?
Well, Stoicism encourages us to focus on living a virtuous life, guided by principles of wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance. It's about identifying your values and living in accordance with them, regardless of external circumstances.
So a Stoic might ask themselves, what kind of person do I want to be? And then strive to embody those qualities in their thoughts, actions, and relationships.
Precisely. A Stoic finds purpose in living a life of virtue, integrity, and service to others, rather than chasing after external markers of success.
And what about Taoism? In a world that's constantly pushing us to strive and achieve, how can Taoism help us find a sense of peace and purpose?
Taoism encourages us to align ourselves with the Tao, the natural order of the universe. It suggests that our purpose is to live in harmony with nature, to follow our intuition, and to contribute to the well-being of all beings.
So it's about finding a sense of connection to something larger than ourselves and recognizing our place in the interconnected web of life.
Yes, it's about finding meaning and purpose in the simple act of living, in appreciating the beauty of the natural world, and in contributing to the well-being of our communities.
It seems like both Stoicism and Taoism offer pathways to finding meaning and purpose, even though they approach it from different perspectives. Stoicism emphasizes personal virtue and living in accordance with your values, while Taoism encourages finding harmony with the natural world and contributing to the greater good.
That's a great summary. They offer different paths, but the ultimate destination is similar: a life filled with purpose, connection, and inner peace.
Okay, so we've talked about relationships, emotional well-being, finding purpose, but how do these philosophies translate to the day-to-day challenges of modern life? Like, how can they help us navigate the constant pressure to succeed, the demands of our careers, and the overwhelming amount of information we're bombarded with every day?
That's a great question, and one that's particularly relevant in today's fast-paced and often chaotic world. Both Stoicism and Taoism offer valuable insights into how to live a more balanced and fulfilling life, even amidst the pressures of modern society.
Let's start with the pressure to succeed. In a world that constantly tells us we need to be more, do more, have more, how can Stoicism help us find a sense of contentment and peace?
Stoicism reminds us that true success lies in living a virtuous life, in accordance with our values. It encourages us to focus on what we can control, our own thoughts and actions, and to let go of the need for external validation.
So instead of chasing after external markers of success like wealth, fame, or status, we focus on developing our character and living a life that is true to ourselves.
Exactly. Stoicism teaches us to find contentment and satisfaction in our own efforts and to detach ourselves from the outcome. It's about finding joy in the journey, rather than constantly striving for an elusive destination.
Shifting gears to Taoism, how does it help us navigate those external pressures to achieve and succeed, especially in a world that constantly tells us we're not enough?
Taoism encourages us to find balance and harmony in our lives, to flow with the natural rhythms of nature, and to let go of the need to control everything.
Mm.
It's about finding a sense of peace and ease in the midst of chaos, recognizing that we are already enough, just as we are.
So it's about finding a middle ground between striving for success and accepting what is, between effort and surrender, between action and non-action.
Precisely. It's about finding that delicate balance, trusting that life unfolds in its own perfect timing and that we don't need to force things to happen.
Okay, so both Stoicism and Taoism offer tools for managing the pressure to succeed, but what about the demands of our careers? How can these philosophies help us find balance and meaning in our work, especially in a culture that often glorifies overwork and burnout?
This is where these philosophies can be incredibly helpful, especially in today's work-obsessed culture. Stoicism encourages us to approach our work with a sense of duty and purpose, but also to maintain a healthy detachment from it. It reminds us that our work is just one aspect of our lives, and that it's important to cultivate other interests and relationships outside of our careers.
So it's about finding meaning in our work, but not letting it consume our entire lives.
Exactly. Stoicism helps us to set healthy boundaries, to prioritize our well-being, and to find fulfillment in a balanced life.
And how does Taoism guide us in finding balance in our work, especially when it feels like we're constantly bombarded with emails, deadlines, and expectations?
Taoism emphasizes the importance of finding a natural rhythm in our work, to work with ease and efficiency, and to avoid burnout. It's about finding a flow state in our work, where we're fully engaged but not overwhelmed.
So it's about finding a sustainable pace and recognizing our limits.
Yes, it's about working in alignment with our natural energy rhythms rather than forcing ourselves to conform to an unsustainable pace.
It sounds like both Stoicism and Taoism offer valuable insights into how to create a healthier and more balanced relationship with our work, even in a culture that often glorifies busyness and productivity.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
They help us find meaning and purpose in our work while also reminding us that it's important to maintain a healthy balance in our lives.
Okay, last but not least, how can Stoicism and Taoism help us navigate the overwhelming amount of information we're bombarded with every day? We've got social media, news, notifications. It's a lot.
This is where these philosophies can truly be life-changing. Stoicism encourages us to be discerning with our attention, to focus on what is truly important, and to avoid getting caught up in the noise of the external world. It reminds us that we have a limited amount of time and energy, and that it's important to use it wisely.
So instead of mindlessly scrolling through social media or getting sucked into the 24-hour news cycle, Stoicism would encourage us to be more intentional with how we consume information.
Exactly. It's about setting boundaries, filtering out the noise, and focusing on what truly matters.
And how does Taoism approach this challenge of information overload, especially when it feels like we're constantly being pulled in a million different directions?
Taoism encourages us to cultivate a sense of stillness and inner peace, to detach ourselves from the constant stream of information, and to find moments of quiet contemplation.
So it's about finding ways to unplug and reconnect with ourselves.
Yes, it's about creating space for silence, reflection, and inner peace, even amidst the busyness of modern life.
It sounds like both Stoicism and Taoism offer valuable strategies for navigating the information overload of modern life. They help us prioritize what's truly important, manage our attention, and cultivate a sense of inner peace amidst the chaos.
Exactly. They offer a path to reclaim our attention and to find peace and clarity in a world that's constantly vying for our time and energy.
Wow, we've covered a lot of ground today. From navigating Netflix to managing stress at work and even finding purpose in life, it seems like Stoicism and Taoism offer some really valuable tools for navigating the complexities of modern life.
They absolutely do. And what's so remarkable is that these philosophies have been around for centuries, yet their wisdom is just as relevant today as it was thousands of years ago.
All right, so we've covered a lot in this first part of our deep dive. We've explored the core principles of Stoicism and Taoism, their practical applications, and how they can help us navigate some of the most common challenges of modern life. But we've only just begun to scratch the surface of these rich and nuanced philosophies.
I'm excited to dive even deeper in the next part of our exploration.
Me too. We'll be back soon to explore the nuances of Stoicism and Taoism, including their perspectives on happiness, suffering, and even those bigger existential questions.
Stay tuned. Welcome back to our deep dive into Stoicism and Taoism.
It's amazing to think that these philosophies developed centuries ago still hold so much wisdom for us today.
Indeed. And I think in this next part of our exploration, we can uncover even deeper layers of insight. We've talked about how Stoicism and Taoism can help us navigate external challenges, but what about those internal struggles? How do they approach the concept of happiness?
That's a great place to start. In a world obsessed with chasing happiness, it's refreshing to hear perspectives that go beyond those quick fix promises. So how does Stoicism, with its emphasis on reason and virtue, define happiness?
Stoicism sees happiness not as a fleeting emotion, but rather as a state of inner peace and fulfillment that arises from living a virtuous life. It's not about chasing pleasure or avoiding pain, but about aligning your actions with your values and finding contentment in your efforts, regardless of external outcomes.
So instead of seeking happiness in external achievements or possessions, Stoicism suggests we find it within ourselves by living a life guided by wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance.
Precisely. The Stoics believe that true happiness comes from inner strength and virtue, from living in accordance with nature and reason. It's a happiness that can't be taken away by external circumstances.
That's a powerful concept.
Huh.
But how does Taoism, which emphasizes harmony with nature, approach the concept of happiness? Does it align with the Stoic perspective?
While the paths may differ, the destination has striking similarities. Taoism views happiness as a state of harmony and balance, both within ourselves and with the natural world. It's about finding joy in the simple things, appreciating the beauty of the present moment, and living in accordance with the Tao, the natural flow of the universe.
So while Stoicism finds happiness in aligning with inner virtue, Taoism finds it in aligning with the natural flow of life, embracing change and finding balance amidst opposing forces.
Exactly. Both philosophies recognize that true happiness isn't a fleeting emotion, but a deeper state of being that arises from living in alignment with a greater purpose, whether it's inner virtue or the Tao.
That's a beautiful insight. It seems both philosophies offer a path to a more enduring and fulfilling happiness than what we often see portrayed in our modern world. But what about those inevitable times of suffering? How do Stoicism and Taoism address those darker aspects of human experience?
Suffering is, unfortunately, a universal human experience. We all face challenges, setbacks, losses, and disappointments in life. But both Stoicism and Taoism offer unique perspectives on how to navigate those difficult times and even find meaning within them.
Okay, let's start with Stoicism. How does a philosophy centered on reason and control approach something as deeply emotional as suffering?
Stoicism doesn't suggest we ignore or suppress our emotions when faced with suffering. Instead, it encourages us to kind of examine the root of our pain. Often, our suffering is amplified by our attachments to things outside our control. Possessions, reputation, even our health.
So by recognizing that we can't control everything and focusing on our internal responses, Stoicism helps us to minimize unnecessary suffering.
Exactly. Stoicism reminds us that we always have a choice, to react with fear and despair or to respond with courage and reason. By focusing on what we can control our thoughts and actions, we can find a sense of peace even in the midst of challenging circumstances.
That resonates deeply, especially in today's world where it feels like so much is outside our control. Turning to Taoism, how does a philosophy that emphasizes going with the flow deal with something as disruptive as suffering?
Taoism acknowledges that suffering is a natural part of life, like the changing seasons or the ebb and flow of the tides. Instead of resisting or denying it, Taoism encourages us to accept suffering as part of the larger tapestry of existence.
So it's about recognizing that darkness is as essential as light, that sorrow is as integral to life as joy.
Precisely. Taoism teaches us to embrace the full spectrum of human experience, to find balance in the midst of opposing forces. Just as a tree bends with the wind to avoid breaking, Taoism encourages us to adapt to challenges rather than rigidly resisting them.
That's a beautiful analogy. Instead of fighting against the current of suffering, Taoism suggests we learn to ride the waves, trusting that even the darkest storms eventually give way to calmer waters.
Yes, and even within those storms, there can be moments of profound insight and growth. Both Stoicism and Taoism remind us that suffering, while difficult, can also be an opportunity for learning, growth, and transformation.
It's amazing how these philosophies, while offering different approaches, ultimately converge on a similar message of resilience and acceptance. So we've explored how Stoicism and Taoism approach happiness and suffering on an individual level. But do they offer any guidance on preventing suffering on a larger scale?
That's a crucial question. While these philosophies were initially developed for individual growth, their principles could be extrapolated to address the complexities of social systems and global challenges. Stoicism, with its emphasis on justice and the common good, could inform ethical decision-making in areas like policymaking and resource allocation.
So instead of prioritizing individual gains, Stoicism encourages us to consider the well-being of the entire community, working towards a more just and equitable society.
Exactly. A Stoic leader, for example, wouldn't just focus on personal ambition, but would strive to create systems that benefit all members of society, ensuring fairness, access to opportunity, and protection of the vulnerable.
That's a powerful vision. And how could Taoism, with its focus on harmony and interconnectedness, contribute to preventing suffering on a larger scale?
Taoism reminds us that we are all interconnected, part of a delicate web of life. Our actions have consequences that ripple outward, impacting not just ourselves, but also our communities and the planet as a whole. So a Taoist approach to social change would prioritize sustainability, compassion, and a deep respect for the interconnectedness of all things.
So it's about recognizing that our individual well-being is ultimately intertwined with the well-being of the planet and all its inhabitants.
Precisely. A Taoist perspective encourages us to act with awareness, recognizing that our choices have consequences that extend far beyond ourselves.
It's fascinating how these philosophies, while originating in ancient times, offer such relevant insights into modern-day challenges.
Their enduring appeal speaks to the timeless wisdom they contain. But their relevance goes beyond their wisdom. I think it's also their practicality that draws people in.
You're right. It's one thing to philosophize about virtue and harmony, but it's another thing to actually apply these principles to our daily lives. What makes Stoicism and Taoism so practical, even in our fast-paced, technology-driven world?
Both philosophies provide actionable tools and techniques that we can integrate into our daily routines. Stoicism, for example, offers practices like journaling, negative visualization, and mindful meditation, all designed to help us gain control over our thoughts and reactions.
And Taoism offers practices like Tai Chi, Qigong, and calligraphy, which cultivate a sense of mindfulness, balance, and connection with nature, even in the midst of our busy lives.
Exactly. These practices aren't just ancient rituals. They are tools for cultivating inner peace, resilience, and a deeper connection with ourselves and the world around us. And that's a journey that's relevant for people of all ages, backgrounds, and beliefs.
It's amazing how these practices, developed centuries ago, can still be so effective in helping us manage stress, cultivate emotional well-being, and find a sense of groundedness in a world that's constantly pulling us in a million different directions.
It's a testament to the enduring power of these traditions. They remind us that the path to peace and fulfillment isn't about chasing external achievements, but about cultivating inner wisdom and living in alignment with our true nature.
So they provide timeless wisdom and practical guidance, but what about their ability to address the bigger questions of human existence? What is the meaning of life? What happens after we die? Do Stoicism and Taoism offer any answers to these ultimate mysteries?
Those are questions that have pondered philosophers and spiritual seekers for millennia. And while Stoicism and Taoism may not offer concrete answers, they do provide frameworks for exploring these profound questions and finding meaning within them.
Okay, so let's delve into those big questions. How does Stoicism, with its emphasis on reason and virtue, approach the question of the meaning of life?
Stoicism teaches us that the meaning of life is not some grand, predetermined plan, but rather something we create through our choices and actions. Our purpose lies in living a virtuous life, in fulfilling our duties to ourselves and others, and in contributing to the common good. It's about finding meaning in the everyday acts of living a good life, rather than searching for some external validation or cosmic purpose.
So instead of asking, what is the meaning of life, Stoicism encourages us to ask, how can I live a meaningful life?
Precisely. It's about finding purpose in our actions, in our relationships, and in our contributions to the world around us.
And what about the question of death? Does Stoicism offer any insight into what happens after we die?
Stoicism doesn't offer any specific beliefs about the afterlife, but it does encourage us to accept death as a natural part of life, something we should face with courage and equanimity. By focusing on living a good life in the present moment, we can let go of anxieties about the future and embrace the fullness of our present experience.
So rather than fearing death, Stoicism encourages us to embrace life.
Exactly. It's about living fully and presently, knowing that death is an inevitable part of the natural order of things.
Shifting gears to Taoism, how does this philosophy, which sees life as a constant flow of change and transformation, approach these big questions?
Taoism views life as a journey of unfolding, a constant interplay of yin and yang, a dance of creation and dissolution. It sees our individual lives as part of a larger cosmic flow, interconnected with all things.
So instead of seeing ourselves as separate individuals, Taoism encourages us to see ourselves as part of a larger web of life, connected to everything and everyone.
Precisely. It's about recognizing that we are all part of a grand cosmic dance, that our lives are interconnected with the lives of all beings, and that our actions have consequences that ripple outward, impacting the entire web of life.
And how does this perspective inform Taoism's view on the meaning of life?
Taoism suggests that our purpose is to align ourselves with the Tao, the natural flow of the universe. It's about finding harmony with nature, following our intuition, and contributing to the well-being of all beings.
So it's about living in a way that is sustainable, compassionate, and in alignment with the greater good.
Exactly. Taoism teaches us that our purpose isn't to conquer nature or to impose our will upon the world, but rather to live in harmony with it.
And what about the question of death? How does Taoism view the end of life?
Taoism views death not as an end, but as a transformation, a return to the source from which all things arise and to which all things return. It sees death as a natural part of the cycle of life, death, and rebirth.
So rather than fearing death, Taoism sees it as a transition, emerging back into the Tao, the infinite source of all creation.
Precisely. It's about letting go of our individual ego and recognizing that we are all part of a larger, interconnected whole.
It's incredible how these ancient philosophies offer such different yet complementary perspectives on these big questions of existence. While they don't provide concrete answers, they offer frameworks for thinking about our place in the universe and the meaning of our lives.
They remind us that the pursuit of wisdom and virtue is a timeless endeavor, and that the search for meaning and purpose is a journey that is worth undertaking.
So it's not about finding definitive answers, but about embracing the journey of exploration and self-discovery.
Exactly. And that journey is one that we can embark on together, drawing wisdom from these ancient traditions and applying them to the unique challenges and opportunities of our modern world.
Okay, so we've explored some pretty deep philosophical concepts, but I think it's important to bring this back down to earth and acknowledge that these philosophies aren't just abstract ideas. They're meant to be lived, embodied, and integrated into our daily experiences.
Absolutely. And that's what makes them so powerful. They offer practical guidance for navigating the challenges and opportunities of life, for cultivating inner peace and resilience, and for finding meaning and purpose in our everyday experiences.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground in this second part of our deep dive. We've explored how Stoicism and Taoism approach happiness, suffering, the meaning of life, and even death. We've also touched on how these philosophies can be applied to create a more just and compassionate world.
But there's still so much more to explore.
You're right. In the next part of our deep dive, we'll delve into the nuances of Stoicism and Taoism, exploring their strengths, their limitations, and how they can help us navigate the unique challenges and opportunities of the 21st century.
Stay tuned. We'll be back soon to continue our exploration.
Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into Stoicism and Taoism.
It's been an incredible journey so far, exploring the depths of these ancient philosophies and their relevance to our modern lives.
Absolutely. We've covered a lot of ground, from navigating everyday challenges to contemplating the meaning of life. But as we wrap up our exploration, I think it's important to acknowledge that no philosophy is perfect or one size fits all.
That's a great point. Every philosophy, no matter how insightful, has its nuances and limitations. Understanding these can help us apply them more effectively to our lives.
So let's start with Stoicism. We've talked about its emphasis on reason, self-control, and accepting what we cannot control. But are there situations where this approach might not be the most helpful?
Well, while Stoicism's emphasis on reason and control can be incredibly helpful in managing difficult situations and cultivating inner peace, there are times when it might be important to allow yourself to fully experience your emotions, even the painful ones.
So it's not about suppressing or denying our emotions, but about finding a healthy balance between reason and emotion.
Exactly. Stoicism doesn't advocate for becoming emotionless robots. It recognizes that emotions are a natural part of the human experience, but it also cautions us against letting our emotions control us.
It's about recognizing and processing our emotions, but not letting them dictate our actions or cloud our judgment.
Precisely. It's about finding that sweet spot between feeling deeply and responding thoughtfully.
That makes a lot of sense. And what about Taoism? Are there situations where it's emphasis on going with the flow and accepting what is might not be the most effective approach.
Well, while Taoism's emphasis on acceptance and non-resistance can be incredibly helpful in navigating change and finding peace in the present moment, there are times when it might be important to take a stand to fight for what you believe in or to resist injustice.
So there's a time for acceptance and a time for action.
Exactly. Taoism isn't about passively accepting everything that happens, especially when it comes to ethical issues or situations where we have the power to make a positive difference.
So it's about finding that balance between accepting what we cannot change and taking action when we can make a difference.
Precisely. It's about being discerning and recognizing when to apply each approach.
Okay, so we've acknowledged that both Stoicism and Taoism have their nuances and limitations. But even with those limitations, they offer incredibly valuable tools for navigating life's challenges and creating a more fulfilling and meaningful experience.
Absolutely. And I think that's what makes them so enduringly relevant. They speak to something deep within the human spirit, a yearning for wisdom, connection, and a sense of purpose.
It's amazing to think how these philosophies developed centuries ago can still resonate so deeply with people today.
They remind us that the search for meaning and happiness is a timeless human endeavor, and that we can find guidance and inspiration in the wisdom of those who came before us.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive into Stoicism and Taoism, what final words of wisdom would you offer to our listeners who are embarking on their own exploration of these philosophies?
Approach these philosophies with an open mind, a curious heart, and a willingness to experiment. Don't be afraid to dive into the original texts, to explore different interpretations, and to find what resonates with you.
So, read, reflect, experiment, and find your own path.
Exactly. Remember, these philosophies are not rigid doctrines, but rather frameworks for thinking and living. Adapt them to your own unique circumstances and values, and use them as tools for growth and self-discovery.
That's great advice. And as we leave our listeners to ponder the wisdom of Stoicism and Taoism, I think it's fitting to circle back to that initial question we posed at the beginning of this deep dive.
Can these ancient philosophies really help us navigate the modern world?
Exactly. After exploring their insights, their practices, and their enduring relevance, what do you think? Can Stoicism and Taoism truly guide us toward a more fulfilling and meaningful life in the 21st century?
I believe they absolutely can. While the world has changed dramatically since the time of Zeno and Lao Tzu, the fundamental challenges and opportunities of being human remain the same. We still long for connection, meaning purpose and peace.
And Stoicism and Taoism offer timeless wisdom and practical tools for navigating those desires in a way that feels both grounded and inspiring.
They remind us that true happiness and fulfillment aren't found in external achievements or possessions, but in cultivating inner strength, virtue, and harmony with the world around us.
So while they may not offer all the answers, they provide a compass for navigating life's complexities with more wisdom, resilience, and a deeper sense of purpose.
And perhaps that's the greatest gift. These ancient philosophies offer us a reminder that we are not alone in our search for meaning, and that we have within us the power to create a life that is both fulfilling and impactful.
It's been an incredible journey exploring Stoicism and Taoism with you today. I feel like we've only scratched the surface, but I've already gained so much.
The exploration is never truly over. There's always more to learn, more to experience, and more to discover within these rich and nuanced philosophies.
Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive. Thank you so much for joining us on this exploration of Stoicism and Taoism.
It's been a pleasure sharing these insights with you.
Until next time, may you find wisdom, balance, and joy on your journey.